My guest today is Arsen Marsoobian. He's the owner of his holding company, SOOB, SOOB Enterprises, and the major areas that the company is engaged in are life insurance sales and consulting, and he's also an author, speaker, and special event promoter. With over 7 decades of working in local government service, nonprofit organizations, major corporations, and now in the entrepreneurial world, he has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. And he's been recipient of several awards for his professional work as well as work in volunteer community service activities. He is currently working on a book titled A Heartbeat Away, Are You Ready?, which will be available around the first of the year. And he is a survivor of 6 heart surgeries since 1999, 3 bypass, 2 for stents, and last one in July of 2013 for a defibrillator. His objective in life now is to have positive impact on the lives that his life touches. And his company's motto says it all: touching lives, transforming outcomes. Well, I know him affectionately as Papa Soob. So welcome, Papa Soob.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Dr. Gail.
Oh, you're welcome. And of course, your history sounds so much like my late husband. I mean, he had 5 heart surgeries. He had 2 bypasses, 3 stents, and he was supposed to get a defibrillator, but he didn't. And because he didn't, he's not with us anymore. But the doctor said he wasn't qualified, so who knows? But anyway, tell us what SOOB, S-O-O-B, stands for, and how did you come up with a funny name like that?
Well, it's kind of like yours. When first time we met, you said you were an SOB. Well, we were pretty close connected that way as well. I just added another O, but it started out as a nickname with the middle of my name, the SOOB, and my kids were called Soobs. And one day on a golf course, one of my son's friends told me, he said, "Hey, Papa Soob," and that kind of stuck. But then once I started to speak and started using Papa Soob on the internet, I realized nobody knew what a SOOB was, what that stood for. And then, so I created an acronym. So it's really an acronym that stands for Success on a Daily Basis.
Ah, okay. And well, you really are like a Papa Soob, though. You really are. I mean, if people saw you in person, you look like a Papa Soob. I mean, you just look like a really friendly, happy individual. So the name suits you.
Thank you. Even my grandkids are starting to call me that. So, the first O then stands for optimism as a philosophy of life. And I'm a life member of Optimist International, the service organization. I've been in that organization since 1964 and became a life member in 1972. But and the second O stands for overachieve in every task. I believe that you really get ahead in life by doing a lot more than you're really asked to do. You need to overachieve. You need to overperform in what you're doing, whether it's an entrepreneur or whether you're working for someone. And the B stands for the belief in the God of the universe. That there is something greater than all of us that controls all of us. And we need to have
that's so true. That's so true. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what a SOOB stands for. And
well, now I know the rest of the story. See. So, how and why did you get started writing books?
Well, that's an interesting story. How I even got into this business. I was 74 and retired and gone through all those heart surgeries and things. I was just sitting around waiting to die, and in that process, I ran across some speakers, and one particularly was Les Brown, and he said I ought to get off the couch and go back to work, do something with my life, that I had greatness within me. Of course, we know that he says that to everybody, but I thought it sounded pretty good to me the first time he told me. But so I got out and I started going into the speaking training, only for somebody to say, if you're going to be a speaker, you have to have a book. And I said, well, I can't write a book. I said, I flunked more English classes than most people have taken. And I was like, I don't know, I can't write a book. You have to write a book. You have to write a book. It's going to be your business card. You got to have a book. You're going to be an author. You got to be a speaker. They kind of go together. So I said, okay, I'll write a book. And I figured, well, the thing I know the most about was surviving heart surgeries. So I wrote a book called Don't Die. And that's how I got started. There was nothing really magical that this was going to be something that was going to change the world, or I had a message I felt that I had to take. It was, okay, if I'm going to get speaking gigs, I need to have a book.
Well, you do have a lot to say. And I know the tagline on your book, Don't Die, is 3 essential truths for your fulfilled and happy life. And if people meet you, they are enthusiastic, because you come at everybody with a smile and a jovial personality. So you had 6 heart surgeries. Tell us why. I should know from my own husband. Tell us about them. I mean, why so many, and so forth.
Well, the first one just happened to, I was trying to get a health insurance policy. Had left Transamerican and gone into my own business, and so I had to have my own health insurance. And I went for a physical, and they did a little bit, and they said, well, we want to do a cardiac test, and then went to do an angiogram, and then to finish the angiogram, the doctor walked in and said, we found 80% blockage in the descending aorta, the widowmaker. And so you can leave, but you may not come back if you have a 911 call, or we just happen to have an opening tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Wow, that's quite a shock.
Yeah, and I then tried to say, well, let me ask my wife. I was married at the time. I said, well, let me ask my wife. And they said, we already have. And she said, do the surgery. So I looked at them and I said, well, don't ever tell me doctors don't sell. You guys think that's the best close I've ever heard in my life.
That's true. But that's interesting how the universe, you talked about the universe,
yes.
That the universe really provided for you. And you went in to get this physical because you were, changing jobs and so forth. And it saved your life. So, you can't fight with that. I mean, it really has an impact like that. So
what happened though, is the thing that's interesting about my story, the thing that made it different than the other millions of people that have had bypass surgeries, like your husband, is after they did that first surgery, and they tried to do 5 with what they called the octopus. Yeah, they did not put me on the pump. It was an experimental device that would just clamp down the heart and do the bypasses. Well, in 30 days, when I went in for my physical to start the rehab, I wasn't on the treadmill but 10 seconds. He told me to get off. They put me through the entire process again, did another angiogram, came in, looked at me and said, we don't know how to tell you this, Mr. Marsoobian, but 4 of the 5 grafts that we just did have all closed, and everything is now going back through the old arteries.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, well, what do I do now? And why did that happen? He said, well, it happens in maybe, 1 or 2% of the times. I said, well, boy, those are great odds. What do I do now? And they said, well, a little diet and exercise, and a year from now, we can probably try to do it again, but it's too soon right now. It's too dangerous to do it again. I said, well, where was option 3 30 days ago? Before it was walk out of here, die, or do the surgery. And now all of a sudden you're telling me diet and exercise, I might be able to survive a year. Well, the universe stepped in again, Gail, because while I was waiting Thanksgiving time, that first surgery was in October. And then in Thanksgiving time, we had some friends over, and somebody said, well, did you get a second opinion? And I said, well, I don't know where to go to get a second opinion. And through the grace of God, she got me into UCLA Medical Center. They did an exam. They looked at me and tested me and said, we can do this again, but it's 4 to 5 times more dangerous than the first surgery, but we can do it. I said, well, okay, let's think about this. And so in the process of waiting, and my daughter was going to get married during that time, so I thought, well, maybe I can get through the wedding. Well, I had another heart attack. This one I had a heart attack. And I went to the emergency room, the first hospital. They then sent me to UCLA Medical Center by ambulance, and I was there. I entered that hospital on December 15th. I left on the 31st. They did the next surgery, which was on my 65th birthday, December 22nd, and I was on the operating table for 13 hours.
Wow. Wow.
Heart was I was on the pump for 13 hours. I was in intensive care for 4 days, in the hospital for recovery after that for 5 more days before they let me home. And I came home on the Millennium. So the uniqueness of my second, the surgery was having 2 of them so close together. And that was the uniqueness. The third one came in 2004. That was in 99. So it was a few years later. And that too was a misread by a doctor who misread an angiogram and thought I would have 90% and 100% blockage. And so they sent me to Redwood City for an emergency surgery, which I didn't need. They thought they would do 4. They ended up just doing 1. And so I've actually had 3 of them, 2 of them, which I don't think I needed.
Wow. Well, it's interesting because, doctors are not infallible, that's for sure. And I know that, things don't always progress the way that you think they're going to. But, you did have the heart surgeries. You are retired. You were retired. You were playing with your grandchildren, and you playing golf every day, and living a bachelor life for 5 years. So what made you want to just change all of this? Was it just Les Brown saying you got to get off the couch, or was it something else inside of you?
Something inside of me. When I was in my 30s, I had got involved with cassette tapes. Remember those old things?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And there was a program called The Dynamics of Personal Motivation by Paul J. Myers, I believe.
Oh yeah, I remember Paul J. Myers. Yes, Waco, Texas.
Yes, and so I started listening to those tapes, and it made such an impact on my life. I thought, I got to tell the world about this. This is amazing that you can change your life by changing your mind. I mean, it was just revolutionary to me. I had degrees and everything else, but I had never really heard anything like this. In fact, I spent over $600 for those 7 tapes, and I was only making $388 a month as a sports supervisor for the city of Fresno, and I'm married and had 3 kids under the age of 5. So you talk about a selling job. When I got home and told my wife I just spent $600 on a bunch of tapes, but it changed my life. And so I started applying all those things, and at that point I said, I really want to tell the world about this. And then people would say, Arsen, you can't make any money selling tapes. Who's going to listen to that stuff? Nobody believes that stuff. Well, there was Zig Ziglar and Dennis Waitley and Jim Rohn, and all of them were that same era, just getting started doing the same message and telling the world. And so I put that aside, but then here I was in my 70s at a Mark Victor Hansen speaking fest with speaker after speaker. And I thought, maybe it isn't too late. Maybe I can do this. I'm gonna start. So I started signing up and purchasing all kinds of programs. I went to Chris Howard's training program, Marshall Silver. Who else was it that I can't remember. Lynn Rose. I met Lynn Rose there, but I met a great many people. And